away queens with fire in our eyes, crowned and called we rise.
Welcome to Crowned and Called, stories of purpose, women of power. This channel is your space for inspiration, empowerment, and transformation. We share powerful stories of faith, purpose, and resilience, spotlighting women who are boldly walking in their calling and creating real impact. If you're looking for motivation, spiritual growth, or a reminder of your God-given worth, you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe and join a community where purpose meets power. Your story matters. Here for series 10 Powerful Women in the Bible Story. 1. Eve, More Than Just a Mistake.
She was the first woman, the first breath taken from a living soul, the first to walk in a world untouched by sin, the first to be called helper, not as a label of weakness, but as a title of divine dignity. In the Hebrew, that same word used for Eve is used to describe God as our helper. Let that sink in. But how do we remember her? Not for her wonder, not for her wisdom, just for one moment, the moment she fell. But what if we've misunderstood the whole story? Today, we're telling Eve's story differently. This is Crowned and Called. Stories of purpose, women of power. Let's start at the beginning. Who was Eve? Not a side character in Adam's journey, but a masterpiece in her own right. Eve was not an afterthought. She was a completion. When God created man, he said, "It is not good for man to be alone." And then he formed Eve. But notice something beautiful. Adam was made from dust, from the ground. Eve was made from the side of a living being. She came not from the dirt, but from something already breathing. That's not just a poetic detail. That's intentional design. She was created with relationship in mind. Partnership, not hierarchy. Unity, not subordination. And in the garden, she wasn't just strolling through paradise. She was walking in full awareness, in full strength, in full identity. She had freedom. She had authority. She had a voice. But like all humans, she also had choice. And yes, she made a decision, a moment that shifted the course of history. But pause here. Let's dig deeper. What was the real nature of her choice? Eve reached out not for rebellion, but for knowledge. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That word, knowledge, is key. She wanted to understand. She was curious. She was drawn to something more, and that's not foreign to us. Every great advancement, every discovery, every revolution starts with someone asking, what if? Eve was the first to ask that question. And though her choice brought consequences, it also brought awakening. The world didn't end with her decision. It began. From that moment on, humanity started a journey, from innocence to experience, from walking in the garden to walking by faith. Her curiosity didn't kill her. It revealed her humanity, and it ignited the story of all of us. Her story didn't stop in that moment. It started something that would echo through generations, because through Eve, humanity began to choose, to wrestle, to wonder, to long for meaning beyond what we see. She wasn't weak. She was willing to explore, willing to risk, willing to face the unknown. And isn't that the essence of every woman who's ever dared to step outside the expected? We've been told to stay quiet, to follow, to not question, to sit down and behave. But Eve stood up, not perfectly, but powerfully. She didn't know what would happen next, but she moved anyway. And in that movement, she mirrored something divine, the very heart of God, who gives us freedom even when it breaks his heart, because real love requires real choice, and Eve was the first to make one. But even after her choice, God didn't turn away. He didn't abandon her. He stepped toward her. In her fear, he called her name. In her shame, he covered her. And in her sorrow, he gave her a promise. You see, Eve wasn't cursed. She was covered. Yes, there were consequences. There was pain. There was struggle. But in the middle of that, God made the first move of grace in Scripture. He made garments for her and Adam and clothed them. That was love, not punishment, protection. He didn't leave her in nakedness. He clothed her in dignity. He didn't erase her identity. He reaffirmed it. She was still called to carry life, still crowned with legacy, still chosen to be a vessel of the future. The world may have called it a curse, but God showed us it was a covering, a reset, a reminder, a moment where mercy met humanity. And if that's true for Eve, then what does it say about you? Let's bring this closer to today. How many of us have made one mistake, one decision, and believed the lie that it disqualified us? How many women have been labeled too emotional, too ambitious, too curious, just like Eve? We've been told to sit still, don't question, stay in line, shrink ourselves to make others comfortable. But Eve's story speaks directly into those lies. She was bold enough to reach, to question, to want more. And though the outcome was painful, God never stopped calling her worthy. He didn't silence her voice. He gave her a future. And today, we still feel the ripple of that truth. Because how many times have you reached for something only to be told that you were wrong for wanting it, wrong for dreaming bigger, wrong for being too much? But what if your desire wasn't your downfall? What if it's proof that you're awake, that you're alive, that you're made for more? Like Eve, your story doesn't stop at the moment of failure. It continues with redemption. It moves forward with grace. It builds again, this time stronger. The enemy may try to define you by your worst moment, but God redefines you by his mercy. And just like Eve, you're not forgotten, not discarded, not erased. You are still crowned, still called, still covered. Eve reminds us that our worst decisions don't scare God. They're not too big for his plan. In fact, they may be the very place he begins to rewrite your purpose. So if you're carrying guilt, let it go. If you've been told you've gone too far, come closer. If you've ever felt like your story ended with a fall, let this be your rise. Because you are not your shame. You are not your sin. You are his daughter. You are more than a mistake. You are still in the story, and God is not finished with you yet. Subscribe for more stories of purpose, women of power. You are not what the world says you are. You are who he says you are.